The Supreme Court hears the Colorado case against Trump's ballot eligibility. Biden's classified documents investigation wraps up, and it is a complete mess. And Tucker Carlson interviews Vladimir Putin. All of that in this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. Welcome back to the Mayoral Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Matt Mayer. Before I get into today's content, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share with friends and family to help me grow the channel, and if you like this content you've seen here today. So, jumping right into the topics, it's really those three main topics I mentioned at the top. Those all happened yesterday, which was yesterday was Thursday, February 8th. It was a huge news day, one of the biggest probably in the past few decades. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the Turmp ballot disqualification bid that was going on in the state of Colorado. Now, there is a second one that's kind of hanging on the balance of this one, which is the state of Maine, where the Secretary of State decided unilaterally to just disqualify Trump from the ballot. Like, that's just one person that decided the whole state of Maine doesn't get to vote for Donald Trump, which is even more ridiculous than the case that was brought up and that made its way all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court that was decided 4-3 in favor of banning Trump from the ballot. It is now at the Supreme Court, and there are projections out there that this is going to be a 9-0 victory in Trump's favor. I don't know where everyone's going to end up on this. I think it's at least going to be 7-2. I don't think it's going to be a 6-3 along party lines. I think Trump easily wins this. All legal experts that I've seen at least seem to think there's not really much of a case for this to go through. Even the liberal justices in other states shot this down. Michigan, for example, where it made its way up to the Michigan Supreme Court, got struck down there. All 7 of the justices in the state of Colorado are liberal, and it was a 4-3 split decision in favor of barring Trump from the ballot. That's not the case here at the Supreme Court. It's a 6-3, really like 5-4, because John Roberts isn't really a conservative. But this should be a pretty easy victory for Donald Trump. So this is from Reuters, and this is just talking about the Supreme Court. I'm not gonna go over this article in too much detail. Again, it was a huge piece of breaking news. However, given what else happened yesterday and the somewhat foregone conclusion that this is going to be ruled in Trump's favor, I'm not going to get too detailed into this, but I will kind of recap this and then give you my opinion of what I think is ultimately going to come of this. So if you see here from this article, it's, again, this is from Reuters. It's just talking about what is the grounds for barring Trump from the ballot. So for those of you who don't know, they're talking about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that bars from holding public office any officer of the United States who took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and then engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Now, this was originally aimed for the people that broke off from the Union, that were part of the Confederacy, and this was enacted just after the Civil War. And this is the grounds ultimately that they have used to try to bar Trump from the ballot. Now, again, there's not too much to really go into here. He's not officially, right now, he is not being charged with insurrection or sedition. The case, the January 6th case against Trump, is about defrauding the American people. It has nothing to do with insurrection. Jack Smith, the special counsel that's charging Trump, didn't even see enough grounds to even charge him with it. Forget about being convicted of it. So this, in my opinion, if it were to be upheld, that means any court, anywhere in any state, can say, if it gets to that level, anyone could bring up a lawsuit. That lawsuit can make its way up to the state Supreme Court, and that state Supreme Court can decide without any type of formal charges, or forget about convictions, that they could bar somebody from the ballot. That's a dangerous precedent to set. I don't see the Supreme Court setting that precedent. Anything could happen, but I don't see that happening. So that happened early in the day. As the day progressed, there was the bombshell of the Biden classified documents scandal. Now, for those of you who don't know, Biden had classified documents from his time as VP and as a senator in his garage somewhere in Delaware, his office in Virginia. He had them kind of all over the place and claimed he had no idea that this that he'd had these documents for decades and decades. And as soon as he found out about them, he turned them over immediately, which is total bullshit. But the left-wing media has continued to spin that story after the raid on Mar-a-Lago. So if you remember, in August, I believe it was August of 2022, they raided Mar-a-Lago for the classified documents. By the end of 2022, Biden was wrapped up in a classified document scandal. Obviously, they didn't raid his home or anything like that, but they claimed as soon as he knew about it, he let them know, which this report says the exact opposite. But the big bombshell in this report is that of Joe's mental capabilities, which anyone who's been paying attention for the last 4+ years know that Joe has lost it. And it's gotten even worse than it was 4 years ago. If you go back and look at what he was saying during the 2020 campaign and you watch him try to get in front of the microphone right now, it's almost night and day, and it was terrible back then. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read a couple of quotes here from the report. You read the full report for yourself. I'm just going to cover a couple of things that touch on the things that I'm pointing out, and then I'll give you kind of my thoughts into this and what's going to happen really with Joe Biden moving forward. It says here, he did not remember, even within several years, when his son Beau died. Now, you'll remember that Joe Biden uses his son as a prop every time something tragic happens. That his son died in Afghanistan, which is not the truth. He died of cancer years later, a tragic death. But he did not die in Afghanistan. So Joe Biden, according to this report, could not remember when his son died, even within a couple of years. So it goes on to say, at the time of any trial or his sentencing, Mr. Biden would be well into his 80s, an age where relatively few people are prosecuted. Now, this is the special counsel's reason for not bringing charges. Now, there's other parts here where it says he knew that he had these classified documents and did not turn them over. He knowingly had them and did not turn them over. So that's essentially the same thing that they're charging Donald Trump with. But Trump's going on trial for 40 different felonies, and Joe Biden's getting off the hook. Now, the special counsel in this case, Robert Hur, might have something kind of up his sleeve. He knew that Merrick Garland was very, very unlikely to indict the sitting president of the United States. That's almost impossible to imagine happening, given what Merrick Garland has done in his time as Attorney General. But he's giving a reason for why he's not pressing the charges, and the reason why is he's saying that because he's so cognitively declined, he would be unlikely to be found guilty, especially when this goes to trial. He'll be in his mid-80s. Presumably it goes down, a few years from now, and he's already, I think he's 81 right now, or he will be 81 this year. So this continues on. It says, first, Mr. Biden could have found the classified Afghanistan documents at the Virginia home in 2017 and then forgot about them soon after. This could convince some reasonable jurors that he did not willfully retain them. So, again, he's pointing out that back in 2017, he might not have had the mental capability to remember that he had these documents. We are in 2024 right now, just so everybody knows. This is 7 years later. In this report, he's taking shots at Biden that I don't know that Biden's going to be able to recover from these body blows. And again, not only is he doing this, setting Biden up to look cognitively declined, which he already is, but now the media has to admit it, and I'm going to go over them kind of going back and forth on the juggling act that they have to do when they told you that he was perfectly mentally fine for 4 years, and now this report comes out saying, no, back in 2017, he really wasn't mentally all there either. But I think what Hur has done here has made it nearly impossible for the Trump trial, in my opinion, to not use this as a precedent that's been set, that they have not charged the president, the former vice president and senator, even though in this report it said he knowingly withheld documents. But again, he's then taking shots at his mental capabilities, and I think it's somewhat genius. I don't know if he did this on purpose, but it's somewhat of a genius report by him. He knew that they weren't going to get an indictment, so he would present this report. They would not indict. If he didn't put this type of stuff in there, it would then allow Trump, as I believe he's going to in the Trump defense team, to use this as a reason to drop the charges in his case, but it's also just taking shots at Biden, saying he's not mentally all there, and it's going to hurt Biden in the polls. It certainly is. And people are, they actually have to admit it, because there's an actual document out there, an official investigation stating that Biden ain't all there. And he wasn't all there in 2017. It continues. Third, as discussed to some extent above, Mr. Biden will likely present himself to a jury, as he did during his interview with our office, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. So again, just taking shot after shot at Biden's memory, all the while still saying that he willfully and knowingly withheld these documents, leaving the door open for the Trump defense team, in my opinion. So I think this report helped Trump in two different ways. Again, taking shots at his mental capabilities, and then on top of that, leaving the door open for Trump to say, this was not, the charges were not pressed on him, and he didn't have rights to these documents like I did. I had the right to declassify any of the documents. He didn't. He had them, willfully didn't turn them over, and you're charging me with the same thing. It's a double standard, and it might work out in Trump's favor. So we will see. Then Biden goes in front of the country, just gaffing all over the place. I'm gonna play one of the gaffes, but he managed to not only get up in front of the country, tell everyone, try to convince them that he's mentally all there, while having several different gaffes, including forgetting that Mexico is not bordering Gaza. He mixed up Mexico and Egypt, which you'll see that they'll protect him in this. There's a clip of CNN anchors trying to protect him. But he also throws his staff under the bus for this classified documents incident. They said, you take responsibility, and he says, well, I take responsibility for not following my staff closer and making sure that they were doing the right thing. So completely threw them under the bus. And then he has this gaffe where he just, in the middle of him speaking, talking about this rosary that he wears every day. Remember, he wears this every day, and he can't remember anything about it. So here's Joe Biden, one of his many gaffes yesterday.
Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented, I wear since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of... Every Memorial Day we hold a service, remember?
Every day since the day Bo died, he wears a rosary that he got from Bo, from Our Lady of... That's it. That was it. He couldn't finish the sentence. He couldn't think of it. Just said, all right, on to the next thing. Let me read off the teleprompter. So that's one of his many gaffes there. On top of that, like I said, mixing up Mexico with Egypt. And the media has to do this kind of juggling act here. And this is where I've said for months, and if you've been following me, I've been saying this for months, not only on my channel, but also on Twitter, saying, I don't think they can replace him. I don't think they can. I think they're stuck with the old man. They've been lying for him for too long. They've been lying about Donald Trump for too long. And this is just another thing that they're going to have to say, you know what? He wasn't mentally all there, even though we told you he was mentally fit as a fiddle for 4 years. Now we have to finally admit that he was not all there. He needs to step down, but we're going to tell you the truth about this next candidate. They just don't have the credibility, guys. They do not have the credibility. You look at the way that people are consuming media nowadays, they're not falling for the bullshit anymore. They just aren't falling for the bullshit. And whatever shred of credibility they have left with anyone that can be swung one way or the other, they come out and say, we've lied to you for 4 years, and sorry, he was mentally declining big time, but Orange man bad. But this time we're going to tell you the truth. I don't understand how they could potentially even pull that off. And again, they don't have the clout that they used to have. So that's why I really think that they can't pull it off. And that's why I really think that they're going to have to roll this old man out there. Even after this, I still think I've wavered a little bit. I'll be honest. I could see it a little bit more now. But I ultimately don't think that they're going to do it. And this is the front page of the New York Times. It says here, 8 words and a verbal slip put Biden's age back at center stage. The New York Times on the front page is talking about Biden's cognitive ability. But again, it's still a little bit of a play on words. I've talked about this before. They use the Charmin language for something they want to make seem not as bad, and they use the sandpaper language for something they want to make seem more sinister. And this could have been a much harsher title, but because they're allies with Biden, they're gonna use that Charmin language. Just make it a little bit softer for him. And again, I think that this is maybe just some saving face down the road where they could point to like, hey, look, remember when you guys said that we didn't tell you that he was cognitively declined? Here's the headline. I think more than anything, that's what they're doing here. So when you see them kind of attacking him, and I could be wrong, and they could completely do a full 180 all over the place. But again, like I said, today it's kind of split. But I think in a week from now, I don't think it's going to be split like that. I think that's going to be swept under the rug, and then they could, in 2 years, 3 years, whatever time, when, it's finally like, oh, Biden definitely has dementia when he's out of the White House, they could point back like, see, we even said, we reported it here in 2024. It's like, yeah, you should have been reporting it way before the guy even ran for president, but you didn't. So they're going to try to build some credibility in pointing it out now. That's my opinion, and I don't think they're going to change. So I'm going to play back-to-back clips here, both from CNN, one protecting Biden, or one kind of covering for Biden, and the other one attacking Biden. So here's CNN last night after Biden had his string of gaffes in his address to the American people. So let's check these two clips out.
Can I just say, I mean, on this point about Mexico, I mean, he spoke on the name of the country in the context of a larger answer about what he's doing to try to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. So is it a perfect answer? Is it great to misspeak? No, it's never great to misspeak. I promise everybody on this panel right now has misspoken and said the wrong name or the wrong the wrong date in a conversation. But, he's explaining in great detail the work that he's doing to try to ease that crisis. And so I don't think that we should lose sight of the fact that he's explaining the work that he's doing as president and get so hung up on one word.
I think the president did himself any favors in that speech. He undercut two of his biggest messages. The adults are back in charge by sort of being dismissive of, yes, he was exonerated. He's not going to be convicted or tried for this, but there's some really damning pieces of information in here. He had deliberations around Afghan war plans with him. He spoke to a biographer about classified documents who didn't have clearance. This showed a decent level of reckless mishandling of classified information.
He said in that he didn't.
He said that he didn't. So I think there was a dismissiveness to the seriousness of this. And then on the other hand, they were using this bizarre line to say he stepped away from an international crisis, the biggest attack on our ally Israel since the Holocaust, to go deal with a self-inflicted investigation by the Department of Justice. How is that supposed to inspire confidence?
So again, you see both sides of what they're trying to do. So the second clip is this woman talking about how these are huge gaffes, and this could be something that ultimately hurts Biden. Yeah, he's not going to be charged, but at the same time, he knew what he was doing in a lot of these cases, even though he's denying. So Anderson's still playing a little bit of defense there, saying, oh, well, he denied it. It's like, oh, well, if he denied it, then that's it. We're journalists. We don't ask any questions nowadays. So I mean, forget about it. That's an official report. Anyway, and then the first clip was talking about, well, Biden misspoke, and he said the word Mexico instead of the word Egypt, and we all misspeak, so it's not a big deal. It's like, but Biden does this all the time. I played the clip earlier of him forgetting the name of where he got the rosary from his son who died. If he carries it with him every day, and it's something from your son, you think you would remember it, but he just froze, and then continued on as if he had finished that sentence, but he didn't. Again, I think they got this juggling act to play. I don't think they can do it. I think that they are stuck with the old man. As we're sitting here today, right now, it is February 9th. We are less than 9 months out from the general election. There's nobody on the ballot for the primary. So we know that Biden is going to win the primary. Could they replace him at the Democratic National Convention? Sure, they could do that. But you're going to then have somebody that obviously Trump is going to attack, because Trump is going to win the Republican nomination. But he's going to attack them for, like, you received no votes, and this is who they're putting up there. So not only that, but again, they've lost, like, any credibility that they have left kind of goes down the toilet once they roll Joe under the bus. And I just don't think they can do that. I think they have to try to prop Joe up for as long as they possibly can. And if they have to take the L, they have to take the L. But they need to try to maintain whatever level of trust they still have with the people, because this ain't the last fight. This ain't the last election in 2024, regardless of what Rachel Maddow says. If Trump gets elected, he's just going to become king, which is absolutely ridiculous. But regardless of what she says, that's what's going to happen. There's going to be another election in 2028. They have to maintain whatever level of trust they still have. And this is just going to be a very hard needle for them to thread. And this was from Fox News today. This is a poll, an NBC poll from before this information was released from the special counsel report. So I'm going to play it really quick, and you're going to see the numbers are staggering of the amount of people that think Joe Biden, or think the numbers are staggering of the number of people that have concerns about Joe Biden's mental fitness.
An NBC poll taken before any of the most recent moments found more than 3/4 of voters have major or moderate concerns about Biden's mental and physical fitness. That includes 54% of Democrats.
Guys, elections are usually about enthusiasm, right? Like, why did Trump lose? Whether you believe it was stolen or not, why did Trump lose? People were angry at Trump. So they weren't necessarily voting for Biden, they were voting against Trump. So you got all those people that went out and voted against Trump. Now you're going to have people that are mad at Biden. They're going to go out, vote against Biden, and going to vote for Trump, or maybe RFK. And there's not going to be that base that's going to be excited about voting for Joe. There really wasn't that base the first time around. There's going to be even less of that this time around. So Joe is in for a world of hurt if he stays on the ballot. But again, I don't see how they get rid of him. I know that everyone has said, everyone that you've heard talk has said that they are going to replace Joe, whether it's going to be Michelle Obama or whether it's going to be Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, whoever they want to throw out there. Now, I will point out as well, prior to this report coming out yesterday, last week, James O'Keefe of O'Keefe Media Group had a video, an undercover video of a high-level Biden staffer talking about the 2024 election and saying basically everyone knows that Biden's mentally declining and he's not all there and nobody likes Kamala, but that's going to be the ticket. That's it. Like, they're not replacing them. They have no plans to replace them. So that's coming from a staffer. Take that for what you will. That person also said that Michelle Obama is not going to be running. I was using information that Dan Bongino had put out there that he said that Michelle Obama is a very private person. She's not interested in having the spotlight on her like her husband did. So he said, based on his insider information of actually working at the White House during the Obama years in the Secret Service, that he didn't think that she was going to run. And essentially the staffer said the exact same thing to James O'Keefe in that undercover video, saying doesn't think that Michelle Obama is going to run. And it's going to be even more difficult for them to replace Kamala because of their intersectionality politics that have race and gender above all else. And she's part Indian, part black, and a female. Like, how are they going to then throw Gavin Newsom in there over her? The only option really was Michelle Obama. But if Obama is not going to run, then who are they going to put in over her? And she is extremely unlikable. Nobody likes her. She would get crushed by Trump in a general election. More so than Biden. And Biden doesn't even know his own name and what planet he's on half the time. So that's how unpopular she is. And then the last thing that happened yesterday that set the internet on fire, it's had over 150 million views already on Twitter, and that is the Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin. So the big thing, one of the big things here, is this is huge news, right? Vladimir Putin is the boogeyman of the world right now in the West, right? Even more so than Kim Jong-un or Xi Jinping. It's Vladimir Putin. And it has been since the invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago. The corporate media didn't cover this at all. Fox News did not cover this at all. This interview with Tucker and Vladimir Putin. Take it for what it's worth, right? Is he putting out propaganda? You better believe that any leader is going to lie to make their country seem better, except seemingly Biden makes it seem worse, saying that white supremacy is the biggest threat to America, making us look terrible. But any other leader other than Joe Biden is going to lie to make their country seem better. So obviously he's going to, at bare minimum, be bending the truth. That said, all they tried to do leading up to this interview was discredit Tucker Carlson. And this is a clip from MSNBC, and this corporate media talking head here is saying they called him an internet guy and a blogger. Like Tucker Carlson hasn't been one of the biggest names in cable news for a couple of decades prior to him being let go from Fox. And he's got his own network now and has more views than probably anyone else on Twitter, at least on a per video basis. Maybe Mr. Beast, okay, that's the only other guy. But they're going to go and they're going to undermine his credibility right out the gate. That's what they did leading up to this interview. And then they come through and they don't even cover it. And to Tucker's credit, I watched a good portion of the interview. The first half hour or so is just a history of Russia that Vladimir Putin gives to Tucker that he's not asking for, but he just gives it to him because he thinks that that's important to explain why he invaded Ukraine 2 years ago. So this here is, and I thought Tucker wasn't going to be as tough on him as he is. And to Tucker's credit, you're going into a place, and this is an example right here of a Wall Street Journal reporter, Evan Gershkovich. Don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm a butcher of names. He got arrested and is in jail right now. And Tucker's sitting down across from Vladimir Putin and saying, this guy shouldn't be in jail. You should release him. And knowing that this guy literally just jailed this guy last year, this Wall Street Journal reporter. So that takes some stones. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you think that Tucker loves Vladimir Putin or not. That takes some stones to go and sit down with this guy and ask him that kind of tough question. Again, I don't care who you are. So from that to him talking about the Donbass region in Crimea, Vladimir Putin then goes on to talk about how they had a peace deal on the table about 18 months ago that would include those two pieces of land, because Tucker has even said that Putin's not going to give up the Donbass region and Crimea. They had a peace deal on the table, but it was Boris Johnson, the former prime minister of the UK, that broke up that deal. Now, take that for what it's worth. Again, who knows who's telling the truth here? Everyone's going to lie. Obviously, Boris Johnson came out and decried that and said that was a complete falsehood. And then he goes after Tucker and calls Tucker a traitor. But Tucker just asked the question. You might not like the answer that Putin gave, and it might be false, but why is Tucker a traitor for asking the question? He asked him, "What is there a possibility for some type of peace?" And Putin said that there was a deal on the table that got blocked by Boris Johnson 18 months ago, and so he comes after Tucker and essentially blame it on Tucker, which is pretty disgusting. Now, my thoughts on the interview are this. I think it's pretty obvious that he was going to spin this in his favor. As I said before, any foreign leader, any leader of any country, with the exception of Joe Biden, is going to talk up their country and make their country seem better than it actually is and more righteous than it actually is. But there is some pieces of information that he put out there that is known to be fact. So I'm not going to go out there. I'm going to watch the interview again, and I'm going to decide for myself what I think he's telling the truth about and what I think he's not telling the truth about. Now, he said in the interview he thinks that the CIA is trying to overthrow the Russian government. I think that that's paranoia on his part. I don't think that the CIA is trying to overthrow the Russian government. Do I think that they may have had something to do, or the American government had something to do with the blowing up of Nord Stream 2? I think it's very possible. I think that is very possible. And he said it without saying it, that basically was saying who has the motivation and who has the ability to do something like that. Those are the two things. And when you figure that out, you're going to have a very short list of people that could have, or groups of people that could have actually been. And I actually agree with him on that. That said, I don't have the evidence. Maybe Putin has the evidence to prove that it was the United States with the backing of the CIA, or with the CIA's funding or intel, whatever it is. That said, I think everyone should watch it and take the interview with a grain of salt. Like, you know that this guy is playing up on propaganda. He wants you to think that Russia's right here. It's the same way Zelensky did it for the last 2 years. But at least Tucker's asking him tough questions. There's an interview out there with this woman from CNN and Vladimir Zelensky. And she's almost tearing up just talking to him. She's like fawning all over this guy, right? And then she asks him like what his favorite music is. Like, oh, that's the tough question. They don't go after her for any to the left, and the left-wing media don't go after her for any type of like, hey, you think you're maybe playing this up a little bit of propaganda in favor of the Ukrainian people? When she asks softball questions like that, I don't even know if that's a softball question. That's not even a question that should be asked. Like, what's your favorite music? It's ridiculous. Well, then they go after Tucker, and again, sitting down in front of Vladimir Putin, asking him why he jailed an American journalist. As an American journalist, interviewing one of the most dangerous men in the world, that takes some stones, okay? I don't care who you are, that takes some stones. And he did it. So, again, take a look. Watch the interview for yourself. It's interesting to say the least. Make your own decision, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on with this Ukraine versus Russia. I think it's in America's best interest that Ukraine comes away with a victory here, right? Just globally, who's a bigger threat, Russia or Ukraine? It's clearly going to be Russia. They have more nuclear weapons than anyone else in the world, including the United States. So yes, we don't want Russia to become more powerful. That's for sure. But we can't just sign blank checks over to Ukraine with no end goal in sight. Ask somebody who's on the side of Ukraine, what's the end? How does this end? Russia loses? Really? That's going to happen? Russia's going to lose? No, Russia's not going to lose this. They have way more people. They have a much stronger military. They have many more powerful weapons. They're only getting from the only reason Ukraine's even standing up at this point is because of the United States. If Putin came to the table tomorrow and said that deal was on the table, Crimea and Donbass belongs to us. We'll give some type of concessions for Ukraine and protecting them in the future, and we won't invade Ukraine. If that deal's on the table, would you want that deal as an American citizen, as somebody who's been paying for this war for 2 years, a country that's $34 trillion in debt? No one else has to die on either side when we know that Ukraine is not going to get those regions back? Yes, you absolutely sign up for that tomorrow. So if you're Biden, you go out and you make that offer. You say, hey, look, this is what we got to do. This is the offer. But no, everyone's going to say I'm a Putin puppet. Like, I give a shit about Vladimir Putin or Russia. I just don't want to be spending the money on this war. We don't have the money to spend on our border. We shouldn't be spending the money on this war. It's ridiculous. So last topic. This is a really quick one. This one is great. This is oh my God. This is one of my favorite topics that I've ever talked about, and it's really something. So I'm going to play this video clip really fast, and then I'm going to talk about what happened here. Okay, bear with me.
Haley, without Trump's name even on the ballot, loses to the none option by better than 2-1. So that is a tough reality for her. Trump isn't even on the ballot, and she loses, and it's a closed primary. So it really reinforces what we've been seeing, that when you're just talking about Republican voters, she's really getting clobbered with Republican voters. It's independents and Democrats that keep her in it.
So what everyone already knew, Haley has no chance to win this. She should drop out. She should have dropped out a long time ago. Because she's getting support from Democrats and independents, she's got a chance. She doesn't even have a chance with those people. Like, there's not enough vote. This has got to be the most embarrassing political result in the history of political results. Let's run through what's going on here in the state of Nevada. Nevada is a caucus state, which means the primary means literally nothing. That's why Trump's name wasn't on the ballot. It means nothing. There's no reason for anyone to do it other than they've passed a state law saying that they're going to have a primary moving forward. And the Republican Party, which runs the Republican nomination process, says, well, it might be state law, but we're going to caucus anyway. So they do the caucus, and the caucus is going to assign the delegates. So even if Haley had won, it would mean nothing. Trump would have gotten the delegates from the state of Nevada, which he did yesterday evening when they had the caucus in Nevada. She lost by 32.5 points to nobody in an election that didn't matter, which means every Republican voter could have just stayed home, say, you know what, I'm going to stay home because it doesn't even matter. Who cares if Haley wins? It doesn't matter. She's the only one on the ballot. There was Pence's name was on there and Tim Scott's name was on there, but they had already dropped out. She's the only one that's running for president of the United States on the Republican side that is actually on the ballot. And she lost to nobody. She literally lost to nobody. People said, you know what? I'm going to show up in an election that doesn't count for shit. And I'm going to vote for nobody over Nikki Haley just to stick it to her. She got clobbered. She got absolutely fucking clobbered. It's glorious. It's oh my God, it's so glorious. Like, if this was anyone other than Nikki Haley, I'd be like, okay, like that's embarrassing. But Nikki Haley deserves it. She absolutely deserves it. So I love this. This is one of my favorite things I've ever seen in politics. And they say the quiet part out loud. It's only Democrats and independents that are even keeping her in this race. And they're not even doing that well. She put all the money in New Hampshire and still lost by, I don't know, 12 points or whatever to Trump. That's like, no, that's not going to happen. It's not happening. She's going to lose. Every poll says she's losing by like 30 points in a lot of these states. Why isn't she dropping out? The only thing is, like, she could know something. They're going to take Trump out somehow, one way or the other, in the next few months, and then she's just there, the only person left standing in the primary, and she gets the nominee. Like, that's the only thing she could possibly be thinking, because otherwise she's just wasting people's time and wasting people's money, which apparently she has become very good at. So I started this last week, or in my last episode, doing shout outs for people that I've interacted with on Twitter to say, hey, look, I've had a good interaction with this person. I think it's somebody that's worth following, so on and so forth. I'm going to take a little bit different direction this week. So my second son was born on December 19th of 2023. So he was just born. He's about 7 weeks old now. And he was about 5 weeks early, and he spent 3 weeks in the NICU. Now, he was fine. He was pretty much fine. The only issue that he had was that he was a little lethargic, so his feedings weren't consistent, and there were times where he really wouldn't take anything, so they had to give him a feeding tube just to make sure he got the nutrition. But in that time, they did several different tests on him, and it had myself and my wife worried, like, is there something majorly wrong with him? Tests came back negative. After about a week and a half, 2 weeks, he started picking up on the eating, and they discharged him. He's been perfectly fine ever since. And the issues that they were concerned about have seemingly gone away. He has been perfectly fine. The reason I bring that up is because the person I want to shout out this week is somebody I've never even interacted with on Twitter. I don't know his politics. I don't know anything about him, other than he and his wife have been dealing with an issue with their newborn son for, I believe it's been over 2 months now. And he kind of gives updates every single day on how he's doing, and some days are better, some days are worse. I can't even imagine what they're going through, because the nerve-wracking state that myself and my wife were in for a relatively healthy newborn was heartbreaking. And this guy, his name is Mark Joubert. I believe I'm saying that right. And it's at Mark_Joubert on X. And they have a GoFundMe. I believe his sister is the one who set it up for her. So this week, I'm going to shout out Mark. Mark, I don't know you. I wish you and your family the best. I hope that your son is healthy and is able to live a full and good life. And I just want to shout out your story here. I'm not going to get into all the details. He's got it on his Twitter feed, a lot of different things that his son has been going through. You could see here from the picture, this picture of his son up there, that obviously he's been through a lot in his short life in his 2 months. So there's a GoFundMe out there. If you guys can, I think the minimum is maybe $5 or whatever. If you can throw a couple of bucks, whatever you can afford, to Mark and his wife to help with the health of their son. That would be greatly appreciated. I would really appreciate that. The bare minimum everyone could do out there is share this video clip, because it costs nothing to hit the repost button. It costs nothing to hit the like button. Just share it out there, and in that tweet, or in the video clip that I'm going to post on Twitter, it will have a link to the GoFundMe. So I'm asking everybody out there, please just share it. If you do nothing else from this video, just share it on your Twitter feed, and so more people could see it and potentially help this family out, get through this tough time. And Mark, again, I wish you and your wife the best. I hope your son is perfectly healthy and perfectly happy. So that's my one shout out for this week is for Mark. Again, someone I don't know. Do whatever you can to help him out, and that's just retweeting, then that's just retweeting. So I appreciate that from my audience. I know that you guys will anyone who sees this video will come through and at bare minimum give it a like, share the retweet to make sure that the GoFundMe picks up a little bit more steam and they're able to financially make it through this time. That's it for this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you made it this far, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share with friends and family if you like the content you've seen here today, and I will see you all in the next video.